Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude at BeyondMystic, and welcome to this very special report entitled "This Time is Very Different" with Mr. Guest and also Mr. Bix Weir. You can find his work at roadtoruta.com and also here on YouTube at Road to Ruta. Mr. Bix Weir. Bix, welcome back to the show, man.
I'm very excited to be here on this very special show at a very special time in our attempt to take down these criminals who rig every market. Yes, I'm excited. Hi, Jean-Claude. Lovely to see you.
Well, you are very welcome, sir. And I'm very excited to have you on. All right, folks, I guess you're guessing what we're talking about here. Of course, we're alluding to Veritasium. There's a story developing. Of course, Bix Weir has been on the forefront of this story for many, many years. And there's a big disturbance in the force here as of late. And so we're going to lay down some track and explain that for all of you tonight. Now, as you can see right next to me, right there, there's a person kind of materializing here somewhere from the ether. So we're not sure if they're going to
rub his head.
Yeah, let's rub at the top of his head there. So we're going to have him materialize, hopefully, here in the next little while during this show. Before we do that, we'll try to lay down some groundwork for that conversation. So that's going to be a little bit later into the show here. But Bix, let me start. This week, you've been on fire, and I thought you were taking a break here for Christmas, but you're pumping up a lot of crazy stuff. Let's start here. Okay, so you have a video about Veritasium. We'll come back to that one a little bit later on. Let's start here. It's all about default. Evergrande defaults. You and I have been talking about this when we did the Death of the Petrodollar series. What's different right now with Evergrande, and how do you see that tying into everything here that we are about to be living in?
Well, I think everybody should know that Evergrande could have been bailed out. They could have been secretly bailed out. They could have, like they did Deutsche Bank. It could have gone away with nobody saying a word about it. They create money out of thin air. They can bail out anybody they want. That's the key. If they want, who's in charge? Who's pulling the strings? They have decided to allow Evergrande to go belly up. Now, that triggers not only a lot of defaults on bonds, but defaults on derivatives, defaults on potential tether investments, defaults everywhere you look. And it was decided. Somebody decided we are going to pull this plug, but it was also decided to turn Evergrande into this gigantic behemoth monster that was highly levered, investing in houses all over the world so that the takedown, the collapse of Evergrande would assist in the takedown of everything else.
Mm-hmm. And now what we're seeing, we had rumors last week that they were about to default. I had some tarot readers on the show saying actually they did default. We just haven't heard it yet. And of course now the reality just hit the rubber on the road, so to speak. And now we're hearing rumors that China is basically fortifying themselves here to at least maybe pay some of the inland investors, but to maybe give a haircut to everybody outside of the Chinese walls. What are you hearing about that, and how does that tie in?
Well, I'm not hearing anything per se, but I have my take on what's going on. They could have, like I said, they could have swept it under the rug. There's a purpose, there's a meaning for all this. The collapse of Evergrande will be the largest collapse that we've seen since 2008. 2008, remember, we had to bail out the banks, or the entire system would have shut down. Mm-hmm. There is no political will anymore to bail out anybody ever again. At least that the voters get to see. Now, so they could have bailed out Evergrande. They could have, just plugged holes and not told anybody. There's not going to be a rejiggering this time. There's not going to be the foreign investors might take a haircut. They're going to take 100% haircut. They're going to get a Clif High type of haircut. And the domestic people who are on the hook, truthfully, this will destroy the entire system, along with the ramifications of what happens to the other housing conglomerates, shall we say, in China, as well as the banks that hold their bonds and all the pension funds that hold their bonds. Remember, the financial system is built on everybody investing in the same thing at the same time. That's what they teach you in business school. You got to have this amount of bonds and this amount of stocks and this amount of insurance. Mm-hmm. All that stuff comes flowing in at the same time because everybody's told to do the same thing. What they don't talk about is when it all starts coming out. Now, these are highly leveraged investments coming in, coming out, they're bang. If you're 10 to 1 levered and you lose 10% of your equity, you're insolvent. And that 90% goes into default.
Right.
So it's kind of like the fire hose and the Dixie cup thing when people, and that's what we saw in 2008, except it was stopped by the Fed. We don't know what they did behind the scenes, but yeah, there's Paul Kanjorski saying, hey, right, we're about to be flushed down the toilet.
Right. Well, let me get into that. That's what I was bringing that up, because I want to play this out here in the next couple of days and weeks so that we can kind of try to figure out and glean here how this is going to unroll. Because as you just said, they could have swept it under the rug. They didn't. It's part of a bigger plan here. Now, in 2008, when we saw the financial crisis, we learned that these people got together behind the scenes here and stopped what Senator Kanjorski here was calling an electronic run on the bank. So that created all these backstops here in Canada, the bail-ins, the bailouts in the US and around the world. We don't need to play this clip. People can go by and check it out here on YouTube. But what's going to happen now? Are we going to see this type of event again now, of bailout, or is this a designated controlled demolition to install something new? What's your tingly senses telling you?
Well, I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be rejiggered. I don't see a global a GFS or anything like that. What I see, the only thing that can make us free is the destruction of the debt. We are the largest problem. You know, there's so many problems in the world. We know that, but the number one problem is debt. Mm-hmm. All our people are in debt. All our local municipalities are in debt. The federal government's in debt. Everybody's debt. Our money is debt. So that's the largest problem. The only way to get rid of that problem is there are the two ways. One, pay back the debt. No country in the history of the world has ever paid back their debt. Ever. Mm-hmm. There's never been one. And number two, destroy it all and start fresh. That's where we are. Has any country paid back their debt?
No.
So when they get close to paying it back, they take out more. They say, "Oh, we're so good, we're going to take out more debt and do the same thing over and over and over."
Right. When you're drowning in debt, we'll give you more debt. That's how it usually works. Okay, let's take a trip back memory lane. Of course, your website, your namesake, your YouTube channel is entitled Road to Ruda for a reason. And now we have a lot of new viewers coming online, a lot of new people tuning into the fact here that there is something really bigger happening behind the scenes. So can you take maybe the next 3 or 4 minutes, explain the Road to Ruda theory, and then we'll get into how that ties in perhaps to this big event here in this controlled changeover that has been planned here for a long, long time. Let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, it used to be hard to explain, but now I've been doing it for 20 years. So the Road to Ruda theory is that there are people behind the scenes, good guys as I call them, working to take down the banking cabal, and they're working from the Fed and the U.S. Treasury. And I know that sounds crazy, and my GATA friends, Gold Antitrust Action Committee friends, thought I was crazy when I first proposed that. But through the information I got from the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, the comic books called Wishes and Rainbows and the Road to Ruda Teacher's Guide, it talks about the need for a gold standard in a unbacked fiat system. It talks about printing money to infinity to destroy the old system and go back to a gold standard. It talks about the battle between the good guys and the bad guys. It talks about Alan Greenspan creating computer programs in the 60s and 70s to create the financial system we have today. Mm-hmm. He was the number one computer programmer in the world, financial computer programmer in the world during the 60s, 70s, 80s. Nobody even knew it. But he was back there exactly like the Wizard of Oz, back there behind the curtain, pulling all the levers to keep the system going. And that's where we are. We're at the end game. The money's being printed to infinity behind the scenes. I heard just today they changed the CPI again so that it doesn't look like we have inflation. They're only using the numbers from 2019 and 2020, basically the pandemic years, to tell you what the consumer price inflation is. Mm-hmm. It is insane. It is insane what they're doing. Clinton did it, but now this is the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, coming out with this information just today, and it is just shocking what they are doing.
Yeah. Well, let's get to this man behind the curtain. Let me bring this up. Of course, Janine and I did this episode, and this is going to tie in some stuff here, and I'm going to ask you to watch your language also. As we were decoding the Wizard of Oz here, as you so eloquently managed, we're starting to see now in the last, since maybe 2008 for a lot of people, this Ponzi scheme of this financial city, the fakery of the Emerald City, as we see in the movie The Wizard of Oz. But there's something about the ruby slippers here. Now, in the original book, the slippers were in fact silver, walking on the yellow brick road. So there was the etymology there of the sound financial or hardback money backing this whole illusion that is Emerald City. Now, with respect to the red shoes, the little people, as we can say, there's movement now coming up in the mainstream news. There's a trial going on, and this information, which is also backing this old system, is also crumbling here behind the scenes. How do you factor that a little bit yourself? I know this is not Road to Ruda, but for the people here understanding the system, that this system or this matrix of control on this planet through the financial system is held up, stitched up, and supported by abuse of this network of small people and party drugs. What's your take on how this is going to unfold, as this news now is just starting to really in earnest, compared to Pizzagate, in earnest now bubbling up to the global consciousness?
Well, considering I just got off 2 strikes, and now I'm sitting with 1 strike, but this is on your channel. I'm not going to, I really can't go down that path. As a matter of fact, I have a letter of, from a lawyer from one of the people I was calling out in the crypto world, saying, you cease and desist or we're coming after you. And he's got a hell of a lot more money than I do. So I really can't comment on it other than saying that, yes, that's the bad guys. That's the bad side of things. And they will be taken down fully. The takedown kind of is in motion now. And a lot of people are starting to see it with their favorite CNN newscasters disappearing rather quickly. And then, if I showed that on my channel, I'd get my 3rd strike. I'd be gone. So
it's just a fashion file video. It's nothing political. We're just talking about fashion of the day, you know.
I love your look there.
Things that make you go, this doesn't add up. Bix and I studied economics, and I'm all confused.
I mean, economics is easy now.
Yeah.
It's all a lie. Everything is controlled with computer programmers. Computer programs was written originally by Alan Greenspan, but run out of the basement of the U.S. Treasury. There's an electronic trading floor in the basement of the U.S. Treasury. Most people don't know that. And out of the New York Fed, which gets with the bullion banks. There's about 10 bullion banks that they collude to rig the price of gold and silver, but also rig the stock market, the bond market. There is a battle, and everybody needs to understand a gigantic battle going on behind the scenes. And it's a good guy, bad guy battle. I think the good guys are going to win. I think they have won. It's just now they're going to mop up the things that we can see, which is great. I'm looking forward.
It's coming to the surface, and exactly, it's not behind the scenes anymore. And as Clif has been saying in the last couple of weeks here, we're going to come to a point where this war is going to break out into the open. Most of the normers will realize that we are in fact in this war. And I remember a video from a couple of years ago. He had said something to the effect that, when you walk outside and you see the black cloud, that tells you, hey, wait, I should bring an umbrella. It's probably going to rain. Well, right now in this situation that we've been in, that black cloud has been obfuscated from us, from mainstream media and all this stuff. So we don't know that we need protection right now. There are some of us that are right, yes, but this is about to change very quickly. Now, let's go back to your video here. You talked about it's all about the fall. Of course, we just set the stage here for Evergrande. Now we're starting to see the ramifications of all of this. Let's get to your next video here. This CFTC silver regulator abruptly now leaving their post. What do you want to share with the audience here on how that ties in also perhaps that this time is very different?
Yeah, well, the CFTC theoretically regulates commodities. They took control of regulating cryptos along with the SEC. I don't know which one has more power these days. Well, I do, but the CFTC was in charge of the rigging of the Bitcoin crash in 2017-18. Christian Carlo admitted it. They went to he didn't admit that they went to Mt. Gox, but they did. They went to the Mt. Gox trustee, got some Bitcoin, and slammed the price at each time it was appropriate to make the price of Bitcoin get destroyed. I hope everybody knows that. I've been documenting that for a long time while it was going on. Now, a really interesting thing happened in the Biden administration. There is nobody left at the CFTC. There's supposed to be 5 regulators, which includes 1 commissioner. The commissioner's guy's name's Rustin Benham. He is just an acting commissioner since the last commissioner left. And oh, by the way, he just happened back in February or March, admitted to tamping down the silver price when it almost hit $30. Completely illegal, completely what he's supposed to be. That's his job. His job is to make sure that we have a free, fairly traded market where the market buys and sells, demand and supply determine price. And here he is, the head of the CFTC, helping to tamp down the price of silver because Goldman Sachs and Bank of America were going to lose their shirts. So what we see in our system is, hey, heads you win, tails I lose. Is that it? Heads you win, tails you lose. It's ridiculous because every time a bank gets bailed out, their losses that's socialized losses. They can't lose because they got us by the balls. They are so gigantic and so in bed with each other that if any of these big banks go down, it takes out everything. Your 401k, your checking account, your savings account, your home mortgage. You won't have a mortgage anymore, which might be a good thing for a lot of people. All your savings, anything you don't have in your hand would be gone if a single one of these banks goes down. Because they're all counterparties to each other. It would take out Bank of America, would take out JP Morgan, which would take out the little guys who have, and remember, a banking industry these days is highly levered, 10 to 1 at least, meaning that every time you give them $1, they create 9 more and go out there and loan that into existence. It's great when things are going up. They make 9 or 10 times the amount of money, but when things are coming down, they instantly lose their shirts. And then that's the bailout time. And they did this on purpose. They put us in this place on purpose so that we would bail them out every time they screwed up.
Yeah. The big rinse and repeat game, but that's about to change.
I think so. I hope so.
Hold on. Bring your speaker volume down just a bit.
Okay.
For some reason. Okay, I think it's gone.
Well, I was yelling in the microphone. I get a little excited.
You get a little bit excited. Yeah, we're very passionate, as you can see. You just mentioned counterparty risk, and I just got an email here from our surprise guest, which is about 10 minutes out. So we still have a little bit of time to
we can set what do you call it? Set the stage or
set the stage, build the road. Yeah, set the stage and build the road for our special guest here. Counterparty risk. In your last video here today, let me bring that up for the audience here. This is on roadtorooted.com. We're getting here. Okay, it's all about the change. Before we get into that and the world of crypto we're moving into here, explain the concept of counterparty risk in the context of these bailouts and these bankers playing all of these games, and you empowering yourself, becoming your own central bank and disintermediating yourself. Well, we'll talk about that one a little bit later, but talk about right now the things that we can do and that you've been doing in the last couple of years to remove that counterparty risk, and why right now is absolutely important to do if you haven't done so already.
I think it all gets back to the concept of too big to fail bank. Everybody's heard that term, too big to fail. It's not just that they're big. It's just that the reality of the failure of a too big to fail bank means every single other financial instrument is taken down with it because their counterparties lose to another counterparty. They all have contracts within each other, and it takes trillions in derivatives to keep this game going. Now, what you need to do, because they are such a systemic risk situation where if one bank goes down, they all go down, you need to make sure that there's nobody between you and your assets. Yeah. Like nobody, not a stock brokerage house, not a Coinbase, nobody. Now is the time to have your assets in your own possession, only in your own possession, because even if it's your best friend, even if you trust your dealer and broker with all your heart, he's not going to have any power to hold on to his assets if his bank goes down, if their bank goes down, if the transportation system goes down. The worst thing you can do is hold. I know a lot of people who have gold and silver, like a lot of gold and silver, and they hold it in something like Switzerland or a different country. I'm like, that's the worst thing you can possibly do. Because when the banks go down, every single country is going to wrap their arms around what they got. They're going to stop trading with anybody. Every country is going to say, okay, we screwed up. Let's start fresh. And those deciders that you've been relying on will be gone. No one will trust them anymore. You won't trust your government. You won't trust your banker. You won't trust what's that guy's name?
In Australia, the guy who just lost his
guy
job.
in Europe, Klaus Schwab.
Oh, Schwab, yeah.
Yeah, Klaus Schwab.
He has trouble walking.
Come on, everybody, put your money into SDRs. You're not going to, these are the people that will not be running the world anymore.
He can't even walk the streets anymore with the death threats, and they had to cancel the last forum there. So, but keep going. Yeah.
It's already happening. And the system hasn't even fallen apart yet. But when it does, they're going to be the people we blame.
Yeah.
And then that leaves a void, a huge, gigantic void of trust. Nobody's going to trust anybody. So that's why you have to keep your assets in your own possession. Okay.
That's perfect on the removing counterparty risk. Now let's move into the subject of disintermediation. We have a gentleman out here, Reggie Middleton. I've interviewed him twice on the show before. He's the inventor of DeFi. He's just been awarded that patent. He's been under the gun and completely sidelined and almost destroyed by the SEC over the last couple of years. And suddenly he's about to see his day. We're about to get into that topic. But before we get into that, explain to the audience here, Veritasium itself and the concept of disintermediation to remove all of these third-party players and going into a more honest, transparent, organic economy. Explain that to the best you can here for the audience who need to understand here the backdrop of what's about to happen between the old system and the system we're attempting to put in its place here after the transition. Go ahead.
Well, I don't like that word disintermediation because it's just a big word that nobody knows. Just think of peer-to-peer transactions.
Okay.
No more bank, no more brokerage house, no more US dollar between your transactions. It's more like a barter system. That's what Reggie invented. It's a software technology that he attached to a coin that it can attach to a transaction. It's like a smart contract between two people. And he patented it in 2014. This is before all these DeFi and everything else. And our government knew how important it was. I have the patent right here. It's 42 pages of brilliance. If you want to read it, 42 pages of brilliance. The mathematical equations in here will make your head spin. But at the same time, it describes what everybody's calling DeFi right now. It describes what everybody's calling stable coins right now. It describes everything that people are talking about in swap networks. These are cryptocurrency companies and all that were 100%. It was invented long before they were around. And it was because he got this patent. This is so huge. Not only can it be implemented into the stock market, the bond market, the COMEX, no more high frequency trading, no more massive contracts everywhere. It would be peer-to-peer. You and I want to trade silver back and forth. That's what we don't have to go to the COMEX. We don't have to go to the New York Stock Exchange. And that's what Reggie invented. The bankers knew this would change everything. You cannot inject truth and honesty into a market that is relying on complete manipulation. So they took him down. They literally took him down in the worst way you can possibly think of.
Yeah.
They destroyed his reputation. They insulted him like you wouldn't believe in the documents they filed, and they were 100% wrong. And this is the SEC that took him down. They confiscated 98% of the Veritasium tokens. Reggie owned 98% of the tokens, 98 million tokens, and they put them in a lockbox. Never before has that been done. CoinMarketCap put a big pink warning, red warning on the top. This guy is a bad guy when you pull up a Veritasium coin.
I think that warning is still up there, actually.
They changed it.
Yeah. Oh,
they changed it yesterday. It used to say, "Oh, he's been tried and busted and had to pay this."
Whoa. It's still there. The Securities and Exchange
Commission
has filed charges against Reggie Middleton, Veritasium Inc. See?
That is exact. It used to say the Securities and Exchange Commission found Reggie Middleton guilty of crimes and had to pay $9.5 million. I was screaming about that for 2 years, and they wouldn't take it down. 2 days ago, they changed it to this, that there are charges filed because it was never settled. Yeah. Reggie didn't admit any guilt.
Yeah.
They just took his tokens and froze them.
Right. Okay. So we're describing here the plight of a lot of these, I'm going to say light warriors who are actually trying to work on behalf of humanity. And of course, the system cannot have that at all costs. They're trying to keep control. And we're moving into a territory now where they are in panic mode. In Clif High's last video, the woo down at the Paradigm Corral, you guys can find that on BitChute here. Let me bring that back up. Let me just refresh so you guys can see that one. Hold on a second here. Yeah, the woo out at the Paradigm Corral. Clif was explaining that we had been on this trajectory of this control system. You could be 6,000 years, it could be actually longer, but we're coming to that zenith or that top part right now. And then once we get there, as the Taoists know, the only place to go from there is down. And he was explaining that the downside of what just happened to bring us to where we are here today could happen in as little as maybe 30 days. This is how quick and fast and furious the changes are about to happen. On that note, later tonight, I have another special report with Janine, who's going to be pulling some tarot, and Julie from Maison de Jupiter, who's going to bring in the astrology to all of this. And oddly enough, they were both picking, because this episode has been in the works for a little bit here, but they were all looking at the same dates that Clif is picking up right now with huge data showing up to it. So there's some correlation here between the WebBot data picking up some disturbances in the forces, and also here the astrology of all that. So stay tuned for that, folks. That's going to be at 10 p.m. Eastern tonight, right after this show. So we have about 2 minutes left here before our guest joins us. So maybe from here, Bix, let's quickly just maybe tap into Tether and stable coins. And I know I'm tying this back into the little people and all that. We can watch our words here, but explain to the audience here that even in the crypto world here, which is an effort to, I guess, liberate the human race from the central warfare banking model, even within crypto right now, there are some downfalls, and there are some coins, stable coins, that are absolutely rooted in trying to perpetuate that control system here into the new system. What are your thoughts on this particular stable coin? I know you and I have bitched about this many times on the show before, but again, there's new people here. So it's important to kind of set that straight, because like everything else, a Federal Reserve, they're not federal, they don't have a reserve. There isn't anything stable about the stable coin Tether. So explain that to the audience a little bit here.
Well, I don't think Tether is part of the long-term plan. I think Tether is part of the what I call the, I don't even know if I can say it, the crypto cabal, pedo cabal. Mm-hmm. I am just disgusted by that crowd, but that's the kind of people we need to enforce laws.
All right.
No matter if it's cryptocurrency or whatever. Now, Trump put in I think it was some kind of executive order saying they can seize assets of these people, which is great. But as we all know, cryptos are hard to seize. But at the same time, there's going to be a lot of change in cryptocurrencies. With the Reggie Middleton ruling, the patent, it affects almost every cryptocurrency out there. And peer-to-peer exchange of value is what Reggie describes. I mean, XRP is described word for word. Hey, these are currency swaps. Here's how this. Reggie has the patent on what XRP is trying to do. So they're going to either have to come to him, Ripple or whoever, and say, hey, can we use your technology?
I think they better ask really nicely. Please.
Well, no, I think Reggie, and he did an interview today. Reggie says, hey, I'm not out to take down the cryptocurrencies. Yeah. I got screwed, and now I'm going to fight. The handcuffs are off. I was literally in handcuffs for years. Yeah. The handcuffs are off. I'm sending out letters by the end of the year to every entity that I think has been using my technology. So any DeFi company is going to see it. Yeah. Any stable coins is going to see the Reggie Middleton letter. The Lightning Network is all about. I mean, this is a patent by Reggie Middleton from 2014. Mm-hmm. So Lightning Labs, what are you going to do?
Yeah. And just to be clear, I wasn't suggesting by any token, Freudian slip, that Reggie would be difficult to play with. He's always been on the side of humanity, and his creations are testament to that. What I was suggesting is that people who are not should at least be very, very polite here moving forward if they are going to repurchase maybe some of that karma that they have associated with all of these other cohorts. And again, if you want to take a course on karma, go check out the last 3 or 4 videos from Clif. He was explaining that. So a lot of people here are on the wrong side of the fence, and the time is up for them here. So take of that what you will. Go ahead.
One more thought on this. I think the Gary Gensler, the head of the SEC now, the guy who taught cryptos at MIT, is going to use Reggie's patent to take down a lot of these cryptos that he doesn't like. He's going to say, hey, this is Reggie Middleton has the patent here on this crypto. And I mean, things like all the DeFi coins, Polkadot and all that stuff. You know, you could make an argument that even Ethereum, we're talking about peer-to-peer transactions. I wouldn't say Ethereum's more like railroad tracks instead of the trains, as Clif says.
Right.
And I mean, the biggest thing to me has always been that it would make our system so much better. If we could do peer-to-peer transactions, we can get rid of rehypothecation of assets, high-frequency trading, front-running, the criminals over at JP Morgan who paid $45 billion to stay out of jail in fines over the last 20 years, $45 billion just to stay out of jail. Imagine how much money they made by doing those crimes. So, yeah, Reggie's going to veritize the world. He's got the patent for it now. So if it's not nailed down, it's going to be veritized.
Okay, I like that. Guys, I'm stalling for time. I'm still looking for my guest here. We're almost there.
We can talk about price if you want.
You want to talk about price? Okay. How do you want
I think right now, nobody knows in the whole crypto sphere, in the stock market, the bond market, nobody has a clue how important this is. It's not being covered in the financial media. It's not being covered in the crypto media either.
Yeah.
It is insane how big this is. What a gigantic patent he owns. He owns the patent for peer-to-peer transactions, blockchain transactions. Everybody else has to either go to him and make a deal, or will find themselves out of the game.
Can't play. Yeah. Well.
And my fear is that Gary Gensler will use this. And he probably will against the crypto community and say, hey, okay, you're not a security. Well, you're infringing on Reggie Middleton's patent, which they are. So everybody's going to have to come. And whether or not it translates into the Veritasium token is the big question. Because Veritasium is not part of the patent. The patent is for peer-to-peer technology. So it's a software technology that was implanted into Veritasium. That's what he used as the vehicle. So if Gary Gensler gives back Reggie his 98 million tokens, yeah, Reggie will probably use those tokens to continue his work and spread truth and honesty throughout all markets.
Right.
If not, then he can invent another token.
Well, in one of your, let's continue on that theme here as we're waiting for a guest. In another one of your last videos here, you were talking about, okay, it's unclear at this point if this change embellishes and amplifies the actual token, the Veritasium token, or not, because there are predictions out there way back when from the Webbot report that someday the token itself could match the price of Bitcoin. So let's talk about that now and see if that could be now the setup for this transformation here, where suddenly this coin is in high demand and also in reverse a high value.
Yeah. When Clif first said that 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it was, I was like, how? No way. So I bought a little bit on, just because Clif said it.
Yeah.
And now I can explain to you how it's going to blow Bitcoin out of the water. We're talking about every financial transaction on the planet. He's got the patent for now if you're going to use this type of system, a blockchain type of system. So yeah, Veritasium, if it is Veritasium that Reggie uses, and Reggie gets to decide this. He's the one that got screwed over. He's the one who's got destroyed. He gets to decide whether or not you're going to use Veritasium or he's going to start with some other coin. But Veritasium token also has other use cases. Right now, he's got the patent in Japan also. You can veritize every house in Japan and make it a more honest market. You could do so much with this technology. It is unbelievable. But 99% of the population, 99.99% of the investing population in cryptos has no idea, has never read the white paper that Reggie, or the patent that Reggie just filed. And it's an education on economics, on blockchain technology, on peer-to-peer transactions, on how to get the bankers out of the position of power. I mean, this is going to be like studied like the Bible in the future.
I love what you're saying here too, because even for me, I've been following this since I bought Veritasium when I think it was $4 way back when it first came out. And I remember how hard it was to get it at the time. And I was trying to convert my Litecoin into Ethereum to go and get it. And I was like, wow, this is complicated. We didn't have the wallets like we have today and these exchange, what do you call them?
It's so much harder now. Yeah, it's harder now. Believe it or not, it's not on any exchange.
Yeah.
Reggie and his token were blackballed from everything.
Yeah.
It was so ridiculous and so, I think it was racist. I am like the last person to jump on the race card, but you know, you got a black guy who invented a way to take down all these rich old bankers, old white bankers, and the way they did it, the SEC, what they filed was, it talked about his character, it talked about how he's showboating, all this stuff. I'm like, what has that got to do with anything about the law?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
The idea was to break down his character.
Yeah.
And I was beyond livid. I've been beyond livid. Jenny and I had done many readings on him, and it was, you know, in the past, he was the guy who was strung up and being whipped and whipped and whipped. Mm-hmm. And then over the last couple of months, she's like, I think something's about to happen. And
in Canadian politics, there's a saying, it's called play the man, not the ball, right? So this is exactly what they did. They destroyed the man here to get the ball. So the Veritasium tokens here and the prevention of the, I guess, disintermediation of the power structure. So this is what really the fight was all about to begin with. Reggie could have been blue as opposed to black. I don't think it would have made a difference. They would have taken him down at all.
No, I think the way they would have taken him down because he was an outsider, but the way they did it was very racist, in my opinion. And I don't throw that race card out all that much. I think people are people, but the way this was done was, and Reggie he hints at it. He says there's something going on, but I mean, he came up in a rough neighborhood and he made something for himself that they took away, and he's not happy right now. He's out for blood.
Yeah. He was very polite and gentlemanly about what happened, and he was chewing his words when he was on this interview. And of course, he's just a high-class guy that he is. And my heart goes out to him, and a big congratulations to Reggie on the patent. We're going to continue the conversation here. I'm a bit 2 minutes late here. My guest is not showing up. I don't know if it's an internet connection or not. So Bix, let's start with this here. You and I had been following way back when the bare naked wealth reports that were being produced by Clif at Half Past Human. In this particular report, this was the soaring 20s through 2022, right? So we're kind of in that cusp there as well. Let's talk about that prediction of, and at that time it was absolutely crazy the way the SEC had destroyed this gentleman to even suggest that perhaps that situation would change. So can you explain the prediction here in this WebBot data on how the government would basically change position here and approach Reggie moving forward? Explain that to the audience.
Well, I do think the government is trying to foster a smooth transition. And it won't be smooth, you know, people won't recognize it as smooth, but smoother than it would have been had you had all the banks collapse and everybody lose absolutely everything they ever had. Mm-hmm. And one way they could do that is to go to Reggie with his technology. This is long before this patent got approved, and say, hey, we need to implement the Veritasium technology into our capital markets to fix them because they are broken. There's nobody. I mean, there's no CFTC commissioners left. That's how broken the commodity markets are, and the same goes for the capital markets, the bond market, the stock market. It is all a rigged game with computers, high frequency traders, you know, servers sitting on, like Goldman Sachs has computers sitting on the floor of the stock exchange waiting for somebody's trade to come in so it can front run it to make a couple pennies in a trillion times a day. Mm-hmm. Shit like that's theft. That's flat out theft. There's nothing free market about that. And Clif had seen the government coming to Reggie and saying, help us fix this system that's broken. Now, my take was there's no way to fix it. But if you implement something like Veritasium into the U.S. stock market, where it takes out the brokers and the dealers and everybody, you know, settlement is instant. It doesn't take 3 to 5 days if it ever gets settled. Mm-hmm. That would have a chance. That would give the system a chance to at least move forward without destroying everybody's asset, I believe.
Right. Okay. So, folks, if you're looking to read it or to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, you can go to beyondmystic.net/Clif High. Clif was nice enough to give us all of his Webbot data reports and the bare naked wealth reports from this period. So you can download those in a zip file, because there's a lot of them on the internet, but they might have been modified by the people who are pushing them out. So here you know that they are directly from Clif. Speaking of Mr. Clif High, of course, you can find his work here at bitshoot.com/Clif High. And I see somebody kind of materializing here somewhere from the ether. What's happening here? Ladies and gentlemen, let's please give a big warm welcome to Mr. Clif High from halfpasthuman.com. How are you? I've been buying time for you, Clif.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're on.
Well, okay, cross your fingers. We've got the winds here now, so they're about an hour early.
All right.
Is that storm? I'm supposed to get a storm on Sunday. Is that the one that's hitting you now?
Yeah, the people in Vancouver got early brushes with it. Vancouver Island, north of us, got early brushes of it about 4 or 5 hours ago, and it just is kicking everybody's butt. We're looking at 60 and 70 mile an hour gusts. So,
wow.
Yeah, really severe. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to ask all the audience members to pray really, really hard for the next 30 minutes that we don't lose our connection here with Mr. Clif High. We got a lot to go through. Clif, as we were setting the groundwork for this conversation, we talked about Evergrande. We went all the way back to the Road to Ruta theory to explain what's perhaps happening now. We talked about your last video here, the woo out at the showdown, or the paradigm corral here, in terms of being at this zenith point here, or this in between the ebb and flow here in the tide. Let me ask you right now, because we just started talking about Veritasium, how the government had treated him, and now what appears to be a temporal marker of yours. Can you, in your words, explain that prediction that you had, that the government would at some point here do an about face and change their position with respect to Veritasium here to fix something? Can you explain that in your words to the audience?
Yeah, sure. The data sets showed that there would be a period of time that might stretch 6 or 7 months. And I think we entered it when Veritasium, or when Reggie got the patents allowed, right? Bear in mind that all of the DeFi on the planet basically is stealing from his work, because he did everything with Bitcoin, which is totally inadequate to do it with, right? So he was so far ahead, they had to invent a platform, a coin, that would actually be able to accomplish the technology that he could envision. Bitcoin was just inadequate to it. So this period of time was going to last 5 or 6 months, 7 months, maybe. We just don't know. It was a broad period of time. During that period of time, a number of minor temporal markers would show up, including linked in that set, things like, the ratio of Litecoin to Bitcoin altering, right? Including the ratio of gold to silver starting to alter. All these kinds of things are in this period of 5, 6, 7 months. We just don't know where it'll be. But it starts off with, let's say, a return to grace, okay, for Reggie and for Veritasium. And then later on, at its end, it's a period of time where it's an acceptance, it's an acknowledgement, and it's a request for assistance by, as I say, our reconstituting economic authority. Not the financial system, okay? People keep talking about financial systems, and we're not going to have one for a long time. We're going to have an economy, and the data sets would have had a government shakeup to the point where we have fiat crash, where we have dollar crash, but it'll be everybody's fiat crashing all at the same time, with the exception maybe of the ruble. And then the government would go to Reggie, because the situation comes down to an inability for an economy to function unless you can have a momentum of trade. Okay, so we can have a deal where I hand gold to Bix and he gives me the deed to his property, okay? But there's no momentum of trade in that action because I have to physically take the gold, I have to go and carry it and put it in his hands. We have to then do the paperwork and stuff is trivial compared to the actual physical task of getting the gold in his hands. And then any other layers on top of that would remove physical possession are not going to work anymore. Right. So it's not going to work for me to have a piece of paper from a bank saying, yeah, I put this thing into an account for him. Right. He isn't going to be happy with that. Right. So what we need is that inherent trustless component that Reggie has engineered into the Veri platform relative to the ability to affix Veri to stuff. Okay, because you don't have an easy ability to affix Ethereum to silver, all right? But you do have a capacity inbuilt to the very ecosystem or the concept that Reggie had that allows that kind of thing to occur. So they'll go back in the data sets, they would go, the government was going to go to him and say, well, shucks, we got us a problem. Can we use your technology? You got any ideas on how we can fix this? And then fairly rapidly, implementation flowed along. So there was a big pop in innovation as a result of government getting adult about where we are. And personally, I think it'll take them until May. I'm not really looking for much to come through until May of next year on this, because of what we've got to go through with the rest of the crud affecting the social order. The economics are a big issue, but we have the physical problems of the people with their, health.
Right. Okay. You just mentioned the timing here. You're talking about May for the government maybe going hat in hand, I believe was the actual term in your prediction. But let's dive into some of the timing here. In your video, Rumors of Woo, in the last couple of months after that, and also in the correspondence between you, Bix, Joe, and myself earlier today, you talked about this critical time period here of the next 6 weeks. Can you maybe jot down on the whiteboard behind you for the people who are visual some of those key dates here, starting, I believe, on the 11th of December, you were mentioning, and then bring that out into mid-January? Yeah,
we actually had the 9th of December here as the incept date because there's been, it was sort of going to become visible around the 11th. Okay, so at the 11th, we have visibility to some level of the crises. This crisis is going to occupy us from the 11th all the way out to January 22, 23, something like that. It's going to have a more visible peak around the 19th of December. And that more visible peak is going to run itself out until maybe the end of the first week. So we'll just say January 7th. The nature of the crises, though, is a little bit indeterminate at this stage. We've got a big amount of bond issues that are roiling through the global economic world. There's all kinds of currency issues with Turkey and Venezuela and Peru and all of these kinds of different places, right? Mm-hmm. And then we have the real estate problems that are just now starting in a bunch of areas relative to Evergrande's default. Yeah, we've got to say it's a default, but it's kind of a funny default because none of the people that have the right to make that claim saying you got to pay me. None of them are out there making that claim yet. And so this is a little funny about what's going on. And then we have the CCP doing stuff in the background. Okay. I suspect. All right. So right now the center of Bitcoin mining on the planet is Texas. Because of some ecosystem, Bitcoin ecosystem information, I suspect that the CCP has been trying to get with the Biden regime to drive the prices of Bitcoin down because they're going to use Bitcoin as part of this settlement package that they're putting together. They will have, okay, so the CCP has one rule, and that is that there is always settlement, and one way or another, settlement in funds or settlement with your life. So you pay with your bank account or you pay with your liver.
Plato or plomo, as they say in Spanish.
Exactly. So this occurs, and we have to ask ourselves, where are all of these people? Jack Ma, all of these individuals in the Chinese financial system, because it is a financial system. But so they will have settlement. Now, the issue at this stage is, will they extend that settlement outside their borders? And I do not think they have yet determined how they're going to break the news that they're not. And that's why we're in this kind of limbo, right? Because there's a lot of extra Chinese, outside China creditors that are going to be ruined by this business. So that right now, that crisis is baked in the cake. How far will it extend into politics? I don't know. It could be, they could use it like a prompt. It would be interesting if the CCP decided that, at the height of their of this debacle of the bond crises would be just the perfect time to go and muck about in Taiwan, because then it diverts all the attention from what's going on in country, and it gives the people in country an external boost if it's successful that they take over Taiwan. It's going to look really bad if they don't, but
Yeah, I wanted to ask you also, is it possible that this weird default situation stalemate that we're in also is because some of the bondholders don't dare ask for their value because they're afraid of having to market the actual zero value of their bond, and thus affecting negatively their balance sheet here? Is that also playing out until they can find a situation? Is that your thought?
I don't know that they can cure that, and I believe you're quite correct that the illusion has got all these people trapped. They dare not ripple the fabric of that illusion for the normies, because so many 401ks and all this kind of stuff is tied up in all of these bonds that go into commercial real estate, and the knock-on bonds of everybody that got a loan from Evergrande and then issued their own bonds, right? And so it just ripples and ripples. So there is indeed that. We could have a Potemkin village situation with the bonds where everybody just says, my storefront's good. See, I got stuff in the window. You can see it. I'm not letting you in the door, but you can see it through the window. We could have that exist for a little period of time, and it might extend for months, but there will be something external to this that's going to trigger all of these people starting to run for the exits. So, all right. So, the data sets that we've had since maybe 1990, at least 1999, suggest that when we get into this fiat crash, global fiat crash, that we're looking at something that will span about 3 weeks, and most of the damage will be done in 48 hours. Okay, not necessarily the first 48 hours, but once it starts rolling, it won't take very long for this supreme panic to take over, and then over 2 days, it'll go around the globe a couple of times and everybody will be wiped out, just by the nature of it. And then it'll take a number of weeks for that to ripple through all of the financial institutions that are tied to that. So as like they say, we're going to be looking at a tide, a financial system tide that will take about 3 weeks to go out once the tide turns. And then at that point, we'll see who's standing there naked, right?
Right. Bix, I'm going to ask you to maybe ask Clif a couple of questions on this in a second, but I want just Clif to finish that graph on the blackboard there, or the whiteboard. Clif, you're not talking there about the Yule tide. You were just talking about the tide concept here. Can you explain to the audience here this period of 3 days and how it's significant here, perhaps to some of the events and the zenith that we find ourselves in on the trajectory?
Okay, so I'm very optimistic and content, really, with where we are at, where humanity is at now, because we have approached and reached this zenith, right? And we have a period of time that extends from the 25th through the 28th. Now, they've monkeyed with the calendar. so what they did, so we now have to actually count from the 22nd through to the 25th to accomplish to get to the same place as it used to be on the 28th relative to this, but this is the period of time where we get into the solstice. And for 3 days, the sun rises and sets in the same spot. The tides behave exactly the same as they did the day before in this 3-day period of time. And then it changes and the sun starts its progress and brings us into this next new year. This period of time is going to be very key relative to our collapse. All right. So the collapse of civilization may well indeed begin in this period right in here. Is it going to hit on the 28th or the 25th? I don't know. It'll be a collapse relative to that glue that is holding everything together, which is the petrodollar, the fiat, and the financial system. From this collapse, we will see that Bix Weir will be proven correct versus Dick Allgaier. This will reveal the good guys, and we will move into a new economic accommodation between us. Let's not say it's a system, okay? Because it's not planned, it's not going to be centralized. There will be central aspects to some things of it. So in other words, the U.S. government will have the Treasury do due diligence and do their duty in the sense of issuing currency in the form of silver and gold or whatever, right? But it's not going to be an imposed system globally on a central bank. So we'll see the central banks fail. I think that they will fail in a shockingly brief period of time. As I say, about 3 weeks from the first one going until the last one going. And what I think will occur, and so this is just a guess, is that it'll start someplace like Turkey, somewhere with a slightly sound central bank, and that'll just go bust. And then there'll be a knock-on effect, and then pretty soon all the banks will start looking shaky. Regionals will go down, and then the rest of the centrals will go down, as there's no one at the repo window, that there's no one taking the currency from them, as everybody is fleeing en masse to anything they can get value out of. This is going to be the weirdest time ever. Nothing like this has ever happened before.
And is it fair to say, just one last question, that we're going closer towards a human organic economy as opposed to these systems of systems that we've been brought under? Would that be the way you characterize it, Clif?
Yeah, exactly. We're going to have to invent things that work for us, because the systems are failing because they don't work for us, because they've been imposed on us with okay, so there is a small group of individuals that have their own view of this planet, and let's say that we're realistically talking about the central core of individuals in the Bilderberger Group or the World Economic Forum. Okay, so we're talking about 13 individuals. 13 people have decided what Earth is going to look like for 7+ billion people. And that shit don't fly. They're not taking my floaty RV into account here. So organically, this is not going to work. It's now failing. They've worked their asses off for at least 160 years, and it'll fail over the course of about 3 weeks because of the interlocking nature and the fragility of paper currency. By the way, there were 2 hyperinflation periods in the last century. One was 1917 to 1919. Both of these were in Germany. And then there's the Weimar hyperinflation that we're all familiar with, right? And that was 1922 to 1923. The one in 1922 and 1923, we think of the hyperinflation as being, I don't know, how long do you think it lasts? Weeks, just weeks. The hyperinflation in Weimar Germany lasted less than 4 months. And the whole government collapsed, the mark collapsed, and they had to rebuild their social order after that. And it was, massively frustrating for everybody, and millions of people died. We will have huge knock-on effects from this, right? But we have to go through this period of time. We have to shed the burden that we've lived under all of my life with the central banks trying to impose this vision from 13 people onto the rest of the planet.
All right. Bix, do you have any questions or follow-up here for Clif, both on the timeline, but also maybe on this idea here of these bad guys now being categorized? And of course, we're seeing the death threats now. They're canceling their own events. And the fact also, as Clif was saying here, that you'll be proven correct here, that there are indeed good guys working behind the scenes. Go ahead, Bix.
Well, Clif said the key word, faith. Faith in who are you going to trust? And and those 13 people, I would spread that out to the IMF, the World Bank, the Federal Reserve, everybody who was in charge of the system that's about to be destroyed will no longer be trusted at all. As a matter of fact, they'd be lucky to survive persecution from the rest of us. And then what does that leave us? And that's kind of where we get into cryptos. I mean, in the Road to Ruta documents, Ruta had to reallocate money to the town, was directed by the mayor to reallocate the wealth. They call them colored flowers back then. But that was the question. When you destroy a currency and you have to, at least for now, we're going to have to figure out a way to move forward either with a currency or something like Reggie Middleton's barter type of situation. Who's going to reallocate the money and how do you do it fairly? And what Ruta had written in the sand and talked about in the comic book was reallocating money, which was the gold money, according to Social Security balances. And you might think, oh, there's nothing in Social Security. Well, if all other fiat money is gone and forms of wealth are gone because of the collapse and the one bank after another bank after a pension fund after everything goes, all of a sudden that Social Security balance is pretty damn hefty. And what it does, and they talk about this in the comic book from the Fed, is it prioritizes those who have put the most into the system. How long have you been working into the system? You should get more than someone who's just starting out. But after all this, so we have this whole comic book, a teacher's guide, a dissertation on scarcity and what money is. The Fed had 36 different questions, like, would the people accept it? Would it work? Would the government nationalize all the gold mines and pull the gold out? Should we pay premiums to other countries? Will trade continue after this new situation? If you want to know what's going to happen, read the 35 questions in the teacher's guide from the Road to Ruta, because every single one of those questions is going to be asked over this time period that Clif is talking about. That's my take.
Okay, very good.
I don't know if there's a question in there.
I don't think he's wrong either.
I think my question for Clif, because we've been talking about this for so long, and the Roaring Twenties report and the sci-fi world and all that.
Yeah. What
happened? Why was it clearly there were things done? For example, locking up Reggie and not allowing his technology to be implemented, kicking the can down the road, smashing gold and silver. Clearly things were done, but why did they do it? Why did they delay it?
I don't know about the whys, okay? But I was beset, all right? So I've never talked about the damage that I was, or the threats I was under by regulators. All right, there was no point to going into it. They got into Reggie. They didn't have anything appropriate that they wanted to move on me. But I spent a year and almost 4 months dealing with those guys. Okay, under threat from those fellows, and they do not play fair. And I think it was somebody from there that caused my Twitter account to disappear for 6 months due to inside fuckery on the Twitter database and this kind of thing. So I don't know why they deliberately attempted to, okay, in a general sense, you could say that, well, they just need to keep it moving because they don't want to die today, right? We'll die tomorrow, right? That sort of thing. But they don't appear to have a goal of, hey, we got to meet this particular day, and then after that, we don't care anymore. But I just do not know. I cannot fathom their thinking. It's not very clear, and it's led us to this particular point now, and it's all coming unglued. I think we're going to come unglued in a very big way. Now, there is an element, the seed for a pearl. Okay, let's put it that way. There is a seed for a pearl here in our oyster of misery. This, because we're going to go through this misery of the collapse of these financial systems that are slavery systems. In that process, slaves will be liberated, but we'll also have vast quantities of upheaval. as that act of liberating slaves shows where wealth was stolen, dynasties were corrupt, all of this kind of stuff. So there will be a lot of wealth in various forms that will be up for grabs as these institutions and very evil people and accumulators, vast accumulators, because bear in mind, we're talking about the ultimate billionaires, these kind of people, right? So there is vast wealth that can easily or can be divided up among the regular humans, if you could ever come up with a system that regular humans could agree on. But there's another aspect of this that we need not go there, okay? So the idea of the Social Security system, there would be some people that would buy it, but the young people, no, because they need, they need the money now, and they don't really want to put into the system and so on. And why should all the old people be gifted with a large boon when they're going to be croaking, right? And your lifespan is limited in your 60s, so why get a large boon? You just need enough to get through without suffering, that sort of a deal. So it doesn't make a lot of sense in my way of thinking to use the Social Security pay-in system that way. But I think the Social Security system is a valid way to apportion, because it is the largest single database of people that are paying into the old financial systems in any form. And so at least you would have the records of everybody. But anyway, so let me get back to this. The seed to our pearl is that there are good guys, all right? And so this is a global seed because these good guys are not limited to the United States. Their good guys are in many different countries. And so we can speculate that when the crash comes, and in that crashing, the banks failing, the corruption revealed, slaves are freed, all of this kind of stuff, that many of these good guys will stand there as the debris falls away, and they will be revealed because they don't have to hide, that kind of thing, right? So at that point, these good guys know and trust each other, all right? Because of what they've come through. So now, let me put it to you this way. Would you guys have confidence if I were to negotiate a trade deal between the United States and Australia with Max Egan?
I would know you guys.
That's my point. Okay. So because people like myself and Max are known, and this will be the way it is with the good guys, when they are revealed, everybody will say, well, fuck, I known that guy, he's been out there doing that shit for years. So we will have that ability because the good guys, those that are revealed, will have an inherent level of understanding and trust between themselves internationally. So we can do trade. We can arrange for an economy to start blooming again, because we could negotiate now agreements that would replace all of the Bretton Woods screw ups and all of the corruption around gold and silver. We could learn to set a fair price. We could come up with a mechanism that we can all agree on to set a fair price on gold and silver, etc., in the good guy world. And then we could just say, Trump could say, I've talked to Putin, I've talked to the new head I've talked to the head of India and this kind of thing, and we've put all of our minds to it, and all these guys have participated, and we think that, and what I'm saying here is that they would confirm it, and they would say, we think it's a good idea that the market actually has gold at, $90,000 an ounce or whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. And so then they would say, we can build off of that because we got a shitload of gold.
Yes, we do.
So anyway, but this time it is very different, right? This is the first time ever that we've had a collapse and no anticipation, no shoveled in meal for us when we're hungry. We're going to have to go on out and find it ourselves. It's not going to be handed to us. This is the first time that we'll be free. The slaves will be free. And so we get to decide. Mm-hmm. This is the fun stuff, right?
That's an interesting thought when it comes to basically leaving a nanny state. In some ways, we've been coddled by our suppressors, and we don't know how to take care of ourselves because we've never had to. We want freedom, except we don't know how hard freedom is. So it'll be a shock for a lot of people when they can't walk down to the grocery store and get a nice fresh vegetable, they're going to have to, grow it themselves or strike up partnerships or use their silver dime to buy the house across the street. Things like that, everything will be new and different. And it's scary because we've never done it. But at the same time, if you want freedom, it comes with a lot of responsibility.
So freedom is responsibility. If you don't have responsibility, you're not free.
There you go. Yeah.
I love it. You were talking about your Twitter being suspended earlier, and I have a lot of people who keep asking me, hey, how come Clif's in Twitter jail again? So, of course, you are now publishing here on a daily basis here on Sci-Fi World. You're at 16,000 subscribers. Guys, I just put the link here in the live chat for you guys. I'm also going to pin it at the end of the show so you can find Clif here up until the point where maybe he's back on Twitter. Clif, we have about 15 minutes left here. You mentioned a couple of things that I want you to maybe expand on before we go. The first one was the fact that in that same data set where we found the temporal marker for this government going back hand in hand to Reggie Middleton, we've just seen that first temporal marker hit now with the DeFi patent being awarded. There was a couple of other things, including the gold to silver ratio, a Litecoin to Bitcoin ratio, and eventually here moving into this unattainium and panic to own. So let's start here first with Litecoin. Explain what you mean by that ratio and what did those WebBot data reports actually entail here for Litecoin. I remember you saying the bell of the ball here in the spring. Does that still hold?
That still holds because, see, here's the thing. There were circumstances, right? The numeric value of a particular year was assigned relative to the values I put into the software, but there were non-numeric indicators for time, such as springtime, the equinox, all of these kind of things that would show up in the reports. So we had this thing where in springtime, which to my way of thinking, we'll just take the Russian definition, that's from March 1 forward into the year until June. So in springtime, we would have a Litecoin to Bitcoin rebalancing, and that lots of people would try and get Litecoin because Litecoin would be instant or suddenly being used for transaction settlements, right? All over the place in ways that people had not considered because of some unexpected event. Well, now we know that unexpected event is likely the crash of a number of major fiat currencies in a very short period of time that precedes that spring, and that would be this winter, which is where we're at now with all of this economic and financial chaos, right? Litecoin had now we've got Taproot for Bitcoin. So Bitcoin will be hard on Litecoin's tail here. So in terms of performance and speed and cost and so on, but Litecoin will still have a less expensive advantage over Bitcoin. People will be more likely to spend Litecoin and easier for them to acquire it. And then within the data sets, it would be a 1 to 5. Right, you'd have a Litecoin would have 1/5 of a cost of a Bitcoin when Litecoin was hitting this utility phase. But bear in mind, those are little snapshots. So it might be only 2 months later that Bitcoin, doubles or triples its speed, and the ratio changes even more during that period of time. So again, in spring, this will be following this winter, which is going to be a harsh winter. In this winter, we're going to have the fiat currency crashes, probably, most likely, which will start this process of gold and silver being unbound from the evil oppressors, and they will start rebalancing between themselves as they're both rushing up. And so we'll have all of this stuff happening all at the same in the same period. And at the end of that period, which I think, like I say, maybe as late as May, we'll have the government go and talk to Reggie. Now, it doesn't mean that they're going to have anything from Veritasium running like right then, right? It might take another 9 months or so before anything rolls out. But I'm of the opinion that the seed for our pearls, all these people that have been working in the background on all of this, have things further advanced among themselves. So they've done the planning, right? And that's a huge benefit. You can go and you can decide, okay, I'm going to build a desk. and you can just go start buying wood and lumber and all this and nails and glue and this kind of stuff, and you'll end up with a lot of wastage, and you may end up with a desk or maybe not. But if you do lots and lots and lots of planning, then you can be certain that you'll have far less wastage, and you will more likely end up with the desk from your efforts. And so the planning is really important, and I think these guys have been doing it for a number of years.
Yeah. And speaking of planning, this is why you, Bix, Jason, for the guys at Crypto Viewing have been educating the people here, because knowledge is key here in this planning phase. But we're very close here to this really hot action phase moving forward here, the initializations or the realizations of all those plans. Let's go back here to the silver gold ratio. You jumped over that. You said the 5-to-1 here for Bitcoin and Litecoin. I think that's going to be exciting for a lot of people. And you mentioned that that could be temporarily lived here, as there's other competitors that might hit the market. So for the audience here, not financial advice, but keep that in mind. Now, in terms of the silver to gold ratio, explain how you would see perhaps a silver catching up and maybe overshooting gold. So you talked about parity at some point here. Explain that to the audience.
Okay, so we know that silver is greatly used in our current environment, all right? And it is like there's pounds of silver in a Tesla. There's pounds of silver being shot up into space every time we do anything out there. And silver is used in all of these screens. It's used everywhere. We are in a silver deficit now. If you take the financial aspect of it, the economic aspect of silver as coins, and multiply and add it into the use for silver, we don't have enough silver. There's more silver demand for coins growing and more demand for silver in rising very exponentially in devices. Now we've hit this weird period where we've run into supply chain issues. So there's been a sagging of the industrial demand for silver. And this is just as seen in the data. They didn't say supply chain or anything. We knew it'd be a time of questions about food supply and food surety, which we also have now. But the data set showed that we would have, for whatever reason, a lagging in the industrial demand for silver. And then at that same time, very shortly thereafter, would be this huge inrush for people wanting to use it as coins, to the point that later on, when economic conditions start recovering, those people that are in the industrial use were really hard pressed to come up with silver in any way, shape, or form. And so then we get into separating the silver into 107 and 109. Okay, the two isotopes, right? And finding that one is just really a whole hell of a lot better, and the other can be used for coins, and we don't really care about it that much, right? And we don't have yet that discovery on how the difference and how to use it. But the data sets describe a situation where we would be able to take one isotope of silver that's very small in volume relative to the total silver market and make it do everything we want industrially, and we'd be able to use the other silver for coins and so on. And anyway, so at some point, silver will come up to parity with gold. Gold's a decent conductor of electricity, but it's nothing like silver. And we've got lots of gold. Silver gets used up and is consumed. So we...
He just blew a few minds there with the 107 and the 109, but that could be for another show, Clif.
Those are isotopes, okay? Those are the two naturally occurring isotopes, AG107 and AG109. Anyway, and so people like myself are concerned with all of this because of the magnetics, right? And we've had some very interesting experiments work out magnetizing things that should not accept a magnetic field when we're using some silver with an interesting property. Okay, it's not reproducible, and I don't want to talk about it just yet, but we're on the trail. A lot of people are on it now. But I think, okay, so I would think that we would have a situation where maybe we would get the bust out, say, in spring. So let's just say that we had March 21, we start getting silver and gold moving in a way that can no longer be controlled, all right? And so then we might see June, July, August, we might see silver and gold approaching parity price-wise with each other relative to dying fiat currencies, but not necessarily relative to things like Bitcoin, right? So be advised there. So it's going to be a question of what do you measure it in? If you're measuring it in something that has a firm number of values, solid values. So if, for instance, I like to measure everything in coffee beans because the coffee bean has X number of value to me that can't change and no one's monkeying about it, then I would see that silver and gold would change their ratio of number of coffee beans per gram of gold and per gram of silver, going up to where they would meet a point of parity, and that silver is going to overtake it for some period of time. And that will be a period of time that is augmented or enlarged by us going out and getting more gold. Okay, we will suddenly say, hey, let's go and rip up that mountain and get that stuff.
I know where it is.
Hey, I've got the pan and the shovel. So anyway, that we're going to go out and get the gold, which will alter again the ratio of gold to silver, continuing to support the silver up through a period of time that may last a couple of years before we get into what was termed the new electrics. And at that point, then we have this stabilizing of silver, and in terms of there will be collector coins and so on, but there'll be so much gold out there at that point that it'll have flopped, right? Because bear in mind, the central banks decided that gold was the chief top dog money, all right, not the people. And so over this couple of years, that will go back to where the gold will become the people's money just because it'll be so plentiful.
Wow.
So everybody swap your gold for silver.
That's a good speculation move, and we see that there's a lot of pressure on it. And I talked to people like Jim Sinclair, and David Morgan and stuff, and they would tend to support that that's not an unsound approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, regardless here of the movement, the suppression is almost over, is what you're saying here. And perhaps this is the setup that we're seeing now into December. This is perhaps why you were seeing December as a critical month for perhaps that $600 silver shot across the bow, which was the initiation here into the change of this gold to silver ratio. Guys, if you're looking for physical silver in your hands, these are the discounts available to the Beyond Mystic audience here, provided by Miles Franklin. Believe it or not, these 1,000-ounce Coleman's bars are going a lot faster than we thought. A lot of people are looking for bulk silver that'll give you, I know, Bix, you don't like them, but people are buying them. I didn't raise, those are at 165 over a spot, really close to spot. And Andy, of course, dealing with other people, also suggested, hey, let's put the quarter ounce and the 1 ounce Noah's Ark coins. These are the new 2022s. One of them at 375 over spot and the other at 245. Extremely good deal, guys. Check that out at beyondmystic.net/silver while quantities last. Cliff, we have about 5 minutes left. I have another show back to back here at 10. Quickly for the audience, get into this idea of unobtainium, gold and silver. You can quickly go over that, but get into panic to own here. We're at that cusp now. Joe and I had produced this learning course here on how to get into crypto, do it safely. How close are we to this panic to own that was put out in your Webbot data reports there back in 2017?
Yeah, we're there now. I'm getting 30 and 40 emails a day out of all of the 600 or so that are specifically, where do I learn this? How do I do that? And I just got a routine canned thing that says, Bix Weir, Road to Ruta, JSNIP for Jean-Claude. Get away. They've got shows out there for this. So, and I'm hearing from very unusual sources of people that I'd never heard from before, right? That are contacting me that want to set up courses for 30 and 40 people in a church, for instance, right?
Right.
This sort of thing. So we're there now. The word's getting out. A lot of people want to know, need to know, and this kind of thing. I don't have time to educate them, so I'm glad you guys did all of that. Keep them off my back. But this is the scary part, guys. The unobtainium was really with the Bitcoin, where we wouldn't know its price in dollars because the value of a dollar is falling so rapidly, but also because by the time someone told you the price, it would have gone up because they've been printing more worthless dollars, but also B, people are just not willing to talk about it, because of what they had to pay to get it.
Right. Exactly. Wow. Fascinating. Okay, Bix, in 1 minute here, I have 3 more minutes before the next show. What can people find here at roadtoruta.com, and maybe some last words of wisdom for the audience? And then I'll ask Cliff the same thing.
Sure. We are going on tour. The Road to Ruta road show starts in February. Amy, myself, Paige, and Josh are taking my RV and a trailer and cruising around. We're going to start in Southern California, from northern to southern, over to Arizona, try to get to Texas. And then when the weather gets better, we'll go up north. We'll go sing in Clif's neighborhood. We'll go busking on his block. And then go to roadtoruta.com. We have a merch site. Paige is set up. Road to Ruta merchandise that she's going to put up there, I think, Monday. So for Christmas presents, it'll say Road to Ruta on it. It's really cool. That's
So
it.
T-shirts and caps, stuff like that?
T-shirts, caps, hoodies. I had a few ideas, but she wouldn't do it.
All right. And folks, also, if you want, of course, education and knowledge is power here. Please do go avail yourself of this amazing free information at bitchute.com/Clif High. Clif, I know you're talking quite in depth now about karmans, how this can be used, how people are being attached now by their cohorts and by the collective karma. Maybe last words of wisdom on that as to how to maybe navigate and position yourself here as this big flipping is about to occur, or is actually occurring right now.
Yeah, that's it. We're in it now. So whatever preps you've got, you're there, So so it's like, are we there yet? Yep, we are. You can't blame us. Open the door and get out. But it's an ongoing process. We will get through it. This too shall pass. Everybody should just be good, make good decisions, and you'll do fine.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much, Clif. Thank you so much, Bix. You guys are amazing. Man, it's an honor doing this work with you guys. So thank you so much for all of your time, folks. This time it's very different. Of course, it was our friend Clif High and Mr. Bix Weir. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe here on Jean-Claude at Beyond Mystic 3. And join me in about 2.5 minutes here for the Galactic Odyssey Astro Finance. We're going to get into all of those dates on the whiteboard behind Clif, and how all the astrology ties into that to bring another piece of the puzzle here into the equation. I love you guys. Thank you so much, Clif, again, and Bix, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.
Au revoir.